Good morning, everybody. It's Dr. Petteruti. You're listening to Intellectual Medicine. That's right. Put down your Twitter feed, turn on your brain, and tune in to us. This is Intellectual Medicine, WPRO, your Southern New England voice of intellectual thought and reflection. So if you're gathering that this is part of a theme for the day, we are on target. I don't know, Shan, maybe today's theme is black and white, right? The world is being compartmentalized into simple little headlines that enable us to be herded into little corners of thought. And it is, well, the beautiful tradition of reading and thinking is being watered down, and we're being replaced by headline information. The headline says blank. How many people actually read past a headline? Now, I'm going to share this with you folks, and we're going to extend it, sadly, to many in the medical profession. Some of the people that are dispensing opinion are rendering opinion that has no more depth than a Twitter feed. And we have to reflect on it. We're going to talk about the the evidence-based medicine dogma. And it's a dogmatic entity. But we have to talk black and white. Tyler, do you tweet? Are you a Twitter guy? Yeah. Now, how many people have followed? Do you have a Twitter feed that people follow? That's cool, you know, and you know, am I on Twitter, Shannon?
You are on Twitter.
I am?
I keep saying
Why am I there?
Great on Twitter because you have quick wit and I'd love to see some.
Okay, so here's my. You got that's the problem, Tyler. Exactly, unleashing on people. Twitter to me is a bare-knuckled exposure of chunks of thought that don't allow for full development. What I like about our radio show is that I get to talk to you folks out there. We can utter a phrase, and unless you are reflexive in your own thought and have predetermined your opinion, you can reflect on it with us. We love that. But what am I going to tweet? I'm going to tweet a sentence. The only way that Twitter gets an updraft is if you're provocative, if you're like annoying people. Well, I annoy people just fine without having to have Twitter to amplify it. Hey, people out there, share with us your thoughts. Should intellectual medicine and Dr. Petteruti tweet or not?
No, we don't have time. You got to sit on that puppy. Like you have
Twitter?
to. Yes.
Well, that's it too.
Who has time for that?
Because it's bang bang. Yeah. Well,
No,
apparently the president
Twitter.
does. He's got time. But really, so you'll have to keep tuning us in. I'm sorry. This is just how it's going to go for us. That's right. Right. You out there and us in here. This is how it's going to go. And we continue to bring you from the fringes of medicine and from the core of medicine itself, our philosophy, which really drives down to this. It is a tolerance for freedom. It is a belief in you. We believe in you as an individual to make good decisions for your own health. We believe in you as an individual to define health by your own terms. It does not need to be dictated to you. A central authority cannot decide for somebody anywhere how you define your good health. We believe in freedom of markets, freedom of enterprise, freedom of thought. And folks, bear with me on this one. To really embrace freedom, you got to be a little bit uncomfortable because somebody else will be exercising their freedom in a way that makes you a little bit uncomfortable. If you're in perfect harmony, if you're in perfect comfort, if there's no stress, we call that authoritarian central control because everybody's believing the same thought. Everybody's acting in the same manner. And woe unto you who stray from the mainstream of thought. You will be crushed and marginalized. Now, this is happening in pockets throughout our country, throughout the world. And one of the things that's really chilling is it's happening in medicine. And the state is imposing itself on what it will allow you to hear and what it will allow you to process. They are attempting to legislate, either directly or through regulatory intervention, what doctors can say to their patients. The freedom of a physician to express themselves to a patient, even in the sanctity of their office, is being invaded. The sanctity of the office itself is being invaded. You know, Shan, when we were training and going through the pipeline, the office encounter was considered really quite private. Before the era of electronic records, you wrote on paper. Nobody saw what happened. It was a safe haven. Now we've got registries, and there's a bill pending that wants to allow, the Department of Health is promoting this bill, that will make every Rhode Islander's medical information go online in a forum that enables them to track every citizen in Rhode Island. They want to know what drugs you're on. They want to know what your medical behaviors are. Why in the world do they need that data?
Where's HIPAA in this? Isn't this?
No. It's just, it's the Department of Health gets to do what they want because it's for your own good, people. It's for your own good. See, people are just morons. They don't know that they need to be taking the drugs, right, that are out there for them. I could tell you this is already happening. It's very uncomfortable for doctors because we're being monitored by central authorities. How many drugs have you prescribed? We get warning letters all the time.
All the time from pharmacies.
Yeah. Why are you not prescribing more statin drugs, more statin drugs, more statin drugs? They track immunization rates. Now, here's the thing. We're talking black and white. Okay, people? Can we please get off of the soapbox of, are you for or against immunizations? What kind of a position is that? Are you for or against prescription medicine? That's idiotic, right? There are nuances here that distinguish one from another. So we are absolutely against state-forced immunizations for non-communicable diseases, that is, non-airborne diseases. If it's a sexually transmitted disease like HPV, we are against the state forcing children to be immunized against a sexually transmitted disease without the support and endorsement of the parents. Rhode Island might be the only state in the union, one of the few, that forces children to get immunized against a sexually transmitted disease. HPV, human papillomavirus, venereal warts, right? It's a bad thing to get, but the state shouldn't force it on our kids. Now, let's turn the page a little bit. How about tetanus? How about measles? You know, there's a kid out in Oregon acquired tetanus because his knucklehead parents didn't get him immunized. There is no treatment for tetanus. You must be immunized or you will die when you get exposed to it. Now, can we separate these? Can we live in the gray zone a little bit? Can we see that state-mandated immunization should be judiciously dispensed in only the most severe of illnesses that are airborne and present a public threat, not a private decision? And this is where people paint with, oh, you must be an anti-vaxxer because you're against the HPV mandate. Yeah, I'm against it. But no, we're not knee-jerk anti-vax people. So we need to segregate this, and we also need to take another look at the sinking morass of the welfare state that is Rhode Island. Now we want to make all the kids, now we're going to expand free college tuition, right? We're going to expand it. You know what? I paid for my kids' education. I don't want to pay for your kids. I don't want to turn an entire class of Rhode Islanders into welfare recipients. Can we get off of the dole for 1 second when I come back? Why Rhode Island is, where's Rhode Island ranked in tax? Did anybody get up this morning and think we need more taxes? Well, no, I don't think so. But we're going to tell you where we rank in taxes. And we promised last week we're going to share with you thoughts and reflections on the sex work industry. Should this be legal? Should it be illegal? Do we really want to pay detectives to get lap dances? These are the questions on Rhode Islanders' minds. We'll be right back. We're taking a short break. This is Dr. Petteruti. You're listening to Intellectual Medicine. Right? Can you imagine that? The detectives? Who's volunteering for that duty? Oh, we're going to do Operation Foxy Lady. Send a team of detectives. See what's going on down there. Right? We'll give you guys some money so you can tip the dancers. Right. And your job's going to be to get lap dances.
Right, and we pay for that.
We pay tax money for that.
That's what I'm saying.
Undercover. And in Florida, they're putting peepholes in massage parlors. Can you imagine?
What?
That's how they captured Kraft. They had cameras. They put cameras in the massage parlor so that they could watch.
No personal space anymore.
People getting massages because they were suspicious that, sex might be happening here.
Wow.
That's just, we got to talk about this because it's absolutely, I think, absurd that the state wants to regulate consenting adults from exchanging sexual activity. It's an arena of personal freedom that we tolerate in America. I guess I'm previewing what we're going to talk about on air. What's on your mind, my Facebook friends? You can text Shannon, right? How do they get in touch with you,
Well, they
Shannon?
can Facebook me right now.
You can Facebook her if there's anything on your mind.
Live.
We could talk about that. We're live, and this is how things go.
Talk about on Wednesday. Starting what date? You're going to have a live.
Well, what date is that going to be?
I'll tell you.
All I do is show up. You tell me what to do, and I just show up.
I will tell you.
All right, Shannon's looking it up right now, but we're going to have an expanded format. That's right, people. We are responding 1 minute ago. We're responding to your desire to have more intellectual medicine and intellectual conversation with what is it going to be, Shannon?
March 27th. Every Wednesday at 12 o'clock.
Every Wednesday at 12 o'clock, starting March 27th, you can tune in to
Facebook Live.
And they can watch. Okay, I'm being, yeah.
We have Pat Ford, the chairman of Rhode Island's Libertarian Party, who wants to jump in on this conversation with you.
Yeah, we'll, Pat Ford from Libertarian. Let's bring him on for a brief intro, and then we'll go from there. Yeah. Okay. What's that, baby?
Just laughing. Nothing. Let's go.
We are back, people, and we at Intellectual Medicine, we are rattling the sleeping giant that we call the people of Rhode Island. The reason why Rhode Island is a great state is because of the people that inhabit it. The greatest resource we have are the citizens of our state. They're creative, they're energetic, they want opportunity. And I believe that they're kind of fed up with structural deficits. They're fed up with the status quo. There tends to be a little bit of passivity that is, well, it's as good as it's going to get. Well, we're challenging the status quo in medicine here at Intellectual Medicine, and we're challenging it in other arenas as well. But Pat Ford did call in, and Pat's a friend of the show, and Pat, you're with the Libertarian Party, is that correct? Welcome to the show, Pat. I recall. Thank you. Okay. Absolutely. Well, listen, I would be glad to have that conversation. I share the intellectual philosophy of maximum freedoms. And I don't know a lot about Libertarian Party, but let me summarize it, and you correct me if I'm off. It is a party that embraces personal freedom as a primary objective, that is, emphasizes individual liberty and de-emphasizes centralized control of personal behavior. Is that close to accurate? Okay. Well, listen, yep, go ahead. Right. Yeah. Well, Pat, do you tweet? Are you a Twitter guy? See, now, I don't know. Twitter may be intrinsically coercive. It's a thought. It's hard to express a full thought. Pat, I really honor your listening to the show. I thank you, and I hope you stay tuned in. And we actually will be talking about obesity again toward the end of the show based on yet another study validating its medical origins. And as you know, we strongly advocate the freedom of an individual within the sphere of their own body to define the health how they see fit. And we embrace, let's call this libertarian medicine, where medicine is becoming central, controlled, dogmatic, monopolistic, and is stripping from the individual a lot of freedom. And it's doing so with manipulative information. And you'll be interested in the next segment that we're going to get to, which is talking about evidence-based medicine, scientifically based medicine. Doesn't that sound great? Right, Tyler? It sounds great, but you got to hear the rest of the story. You must hear how the evidence is derived. So, right. Yep. Yep. Now listen, people, Pat, I want to jump into, because I want to amplify this. If you're listening to this and you don't think it's relevant to you because you don't have a child and you don't care, nor do you want to know about HPV, the point that Pat Ford is driving at and that I'm emphasizing is your freedom. Now, if somebody else's freedom gets nibbled away, but it doesn't directly affect you in the moment, you've lost freedom as well. And Pat, you know what bothers me about this conversation regarding HPV is the way Amy and the HPV advocates, the no HPV advocates, they're attempting to marginalize them, they being Department of Health officials and others, by labeling them as thoughtless anti-vaxxers that are ignoring science. And that they miss the point, they mislabel them. I've spoken out at these forums in front of the Department of Health, and I believe that it feeds into a targeting dynamic. That is, when those of us who hold alternative opinions regarding dogma of medicine speak out, we do so at personal risk because of the powers that they have to affect people's careers and lives. And so I think a lot of doctors, well, they run scared when these issues come up and they don't speak their mind. I've borne witness to this in my practice, Shannon. We know patients whose doctors have gotten mad at them and thrown them out of their practice because they wouldn't follow the doctor's command when it came to immunization status.
Oh yeah, I've seen it firsthand. Even just flu shots. I've seen it.
In what way?
When I did my pediatric rotation.
Yeah.
The parents didn't want a flu shot, and the pediatrician said, fine, this is their last appointment, they can find someone else.
Wow.
Because they got paid. How many percentage they got paid?
Yeah. Yeah, they don't want. Well, Pat, we're gonna sign off so we can pivot our conversation, and I know that you'll have an interesting take on this as well, which is the sex industry. We need to talk about that. But thanks for calling in, and thanks for listening, brother. Thank you. So we have time, right? We can solve this whole thing. We got 4 minutes. That's all it's going to take to solve this. I mean, how easy. So it's been said there are two things that are certain in life: death and taxes. I disagree. There are three: death, taxes, and sex. And can we please talk about human sexuality in a mature manner? You want to have a junior high conversation, go on your Twitter feed. You want to have an intellectual conversation, stay tuned and think and process. How many times has a healthcare provider asked you in the course of an appointment, how's your sexual function? How's your libido? Is that an odd question to ask of a clinician, to ask of a patient? I don't think so, because it is central to our human nature. It is a core element of our being. What we do with it, how we express it, how we manifest it, becomes a matter of your philosophy, a matter of your personal belief system, okay? So getting back to this idea of freedom of choice, two adults. Now we've got this guy, Robert Kraft, innocent until proven guilty, by the way. So let's hold on to that American principle. And he's down in Florida, and he's being accused of having paid for sex, which begs the question, should that be illegal in the first place? There are many countries where the sex industry is legal and regulated. Now, we have to separate human trafficking, which is universally illegal, which deprives an individual of their freedom and is against the core principle of freedom of choice. But really, Shannon, I mean, isn't this hearkening back to men trying to control the sexuality and the bodies and the function of women when you have these laws in place that are inhibiting primarily women, although men do engage in the sex industry as well, from choosing to capitalize on and their physical attributes to make money.
Of course, they control it. They get the money from it.
Right.
It's
Now,
happening.
so they control it because now, if you're in the sex industry and it's illegal, you need to have a protector. You need to pay somebody. And furthermore, if you're violated, if they steal from you, if they beat you, you have nowhere to go. You can't report the crime because you're a criminal. You're a sex working criminal. Now we have this issue in Rhode Island at the Foxy Lady. Do I really want my tax money to be spent on detectives getting lap dances at the Foxy Lady? Do I really need to be protected from a horde of lap dancing sex workers? Are they imposing on my life? Are they going to mug me? Are they going to steal stuff from me? No, I don't care if somebody wants to pay for sex. You know, in some countries, it's considered a sex act to get a massage. You can't be seen in some countries as a woman with your head not wrapped because it's considered sexual. I got a minute. I got to solve this thing in a minute. Okay, we can do that. In some nations, if you get a massage, they'll cut your hands off for having sexual activity. You know, my point, folks, is that there's a wide range of human behaviors, some of which are manifested in sexual activity, and in some cases, there is a mutual desire to have that as a paid-for commodity. I don't get that. You know, fortunately, it's never been a part of an interest, but it is universal. And furthermore, it goes back to this freedom of choice. Now we're criminalizing human behaviors, embarrassing people, arresting them, wasting time and money, investigating. Let's just have there is a bill in Rhode Island now. It's being opposed by a lot of the police forces. Look, I have a lot of respect for the men and women in blue, whatever color they wear these days, right? But you got to bear in mind that crime is an industry and crime protection is an industry. And the more crimes there are to protect, the more budget you need. So now you've got to expand forces so you can have a bigger vice squad so you can go after what? You're losing the cannabis business. I'd propose that we should be losing the sex worker business as well. And we should be guiding them through this. So there we go. From the Revolution Softwatch News Center, up next, it's Doug Lizette with the headlines. Hey, Doug. So,
Seriously, who cares about crack? Really?
Right.
Really? Does that affect anyone else?
it doesn't affect any other human being. Shannon's point is that, you know, if you're a 77-year-old widower or anybody, it matters not your age, it matters not your gender. If this is one of the ways that you choose to manifest your sexual behavior is through a mutually agreeable commodity exchange, then it's your prerogative. And it was like Pat Ford was saying, part of freedom means tolerating behaviors on the part of others that you would disagree with, but they have the freedom to make the choice. So whether or not you agree with the profession of a sex worker is less important than whether or not we need to regulate it as a state. Whether or not you believe in getting an HPV immunization is less important than whether or not it should be regulated as a state. Whether or not you want to share your medical information.
Pat Ford called back to tell me to pass along his info to you, so I just texted you, just so you're not like, why did I get this text?
Thank you. Yeah, the idea that, where was I, Shan? Lost my train of thought.
Whether or not.
Oh, we're talking about freedom. So now they want to, you know, track things. It seems innocent, doesn't it? Do you remember a couple of years ago, Shannon, when the state police department
Yes.
gained access
Yes.
to the prescription monitoring program?
Yep.
Yeah. Whatever happened with that? So a couple of years ago in Rhode
What did
Island,
happen with that?
the state police
I'm gonna look it up.
gained the authority to scour the prescription monitoring program. Anytime you get a controlled substance prescribed, and that can be testosterone is considered a controlled substance. Drugs for pain are considered controlled, many of them. You go into a registry that's available to your doctor and to the pharmacy. The objective of that is to ensure safe prescribing. Now the the state police can look into that registry and just kind of flip through the pages. Gee, I wonder what Shannon got prescribed. I wonder what Joe Smith got prescribed.
July of 17, Raimondo
Right.
signs bill allowing warrantless searches.
Warrantless searches. Think of that term, a warrantless search. That's awful. So a warrantless search means that there's no probable cause. They have no reason for suspicion. They're just looking for stuff. They're poking under rocks. Really? I wonder how many crime rings they've uncovered, Shannon. I wonder how many times they've used this warrantless search to protect the public from crime. That's outrageous. That bill needs to be overturned. And it doesn't need to be expanded, and we don't need the Department of Health looking into people's records without their expressed and written consent. Drive me crazy.
Wow.
Why not just get LASIK at the LASIK Vision Institute?
You know, to protect the public from diversion.
To protect the public from diversion. Isn't that what the Department of Health and the physicians and the pharmacists are doing? And don't they have the authority to report suspicious behavior to the police? And don't the police then have the ability to get a warrant to investigate it? So they're protecting the public from diversion. Is that the that's the
That's
stated?
what they're saying.
Okay. So I want to know, how many diversion schemes have they uncovered by
Right.
scouring that?
Right.
I want to know.
Yeah.
Who can we call? The State Department, the police, state police? Right? Let us know. I wonder if there are any state police that are listening.
Do we know any?
Well, we know a lot of police. That was warrantless searches.
Need a break? Your winter escape is closer than you think. For a limited time, Twin River Casino Hotel is offering stay, dine, and play packages where guests can enjoy a hotel.
So while we're on the topic of immunizations, yet another study, folks, have verified that there's no link between measles immunizations and autism. Shannon, are you comfortable with the fact that measles immunization doesn't cause autism? Do you feel the
Am I
evidence?
I do.
Okay. But other immunizations haven't been as thoroughly researched. So, are you comfortable with the long-term consequences of the HPV immunization?
No.
Okay, so that remains an unknown commodity.
You know what it is? I don't want to talk into that. I think part of the issue now is with the amount that's given. You know, used to you get one MMR.
Right.
Now you're getting 4, or 5 at a time.
Immunizations.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I
And how do
think-
they all cross-react?
Right. I think, there should just be a different schedule. And we always said, a 2-day-old does not need an Hep B vaccine.
Okay.
Building and remodeling today. 800-866-1499, 800-866-1499, or visit marshallbr.com. Tell them, Tom, we're your local roofing, siding, and window people. Now, back to Intellectual Medicine with Dr. Petteruti. Call in now at 438-WPRO or 1-800-321-WPRO.
We're back. It's Dr. Petteruti. This is Intellectual Medicine. I like that's a good song choice, Tyler. Okay, so we're listening to Addicted to Love after we were talking about sex workers. Now tell me, people, how would you feel of the opinion I just rendered if you found out that I was a paid consultant to the Foxy Lady? How would you feel about the opinion I just rendered if you found out that I was receiving money from the no HPV mandate people? How would you feel if you found out that intellectual medicine was being funded in part by contributions from the Libertarian Party? Would that color your thoughts about what we express here? It should. You should want to know that. Shannon, how's our sponsorship list
Let me
growing?
go through. This has been like 2 years. Nothing. Anyone want to sponsor us?
Nothing? Who's in charge of that anyhow?
Seriously. We're not good with that.
I think you're in charge of that. I'm going
think I
to
am
fire
too.
you. There's a world of people out there doling money out to everybody.
No, except for us.
And look, I'm corruptible. I'll take your we'll take your money. Really, no. It won't affect our opinion. We're going to take, and here is the arrogant deceit. I can take your money and it won't affect my opinion. You know why? Because I'm above being influenced by money. Really? You really are. So you got to follow the dollars here and the power. People like power, people like money. They like to control it. We were just talking about the warrantless searches. How does that sound to you guys, right? How would you like your state police to execute searches without a warrant with no probable cause, just in case you're doing something wrong? I want to be able to look in your cabinet. How about if the state police had the right to knock on your door, come into your house, and open up your medicine cabinet just to kind of check stuff out? Well, guess what, people? They can kind of do that. When was that law passed, Shannon?
July 17th.
July 17th.
July 2017.
2017. A law was passed that authorized the state police to do warrantless searches of the prescription monitoring program. The prescription monitoring program is a computer-generated online file of all controlled substances written by doctors in Rhode Island. It includes opioids, it includes benzodiazepine anxiolytics, it includes testosterone, it includes weight loss medicine. You're probably on that list. And your doctor and your pharmacist have it available, and the Department of Health has it available. And it was with a noble cause, the idea that we're going to try to prevent patients from doctor shopping and diverting drugs, so it had a reasonable premise for its construction. But follow the bouncing ball. When the state gets a hold of centralized information, they cannot help themselves. They start to pry. And now the state police have access to that list. The list was never intended to criminalize individuals' behaviors and to raise suspicion where none exists. It's a false premise that the state police need to go thumbing through these medical records. It's a false premise that the Department of Health needs to randomly, because after all, you can't protect yourselves. This is a corrosion. Central control is a corrosion of freedoms. Now, the greatest form of central control, this sort of siphoning off of your freedom, happens through taxation. More tax, less freedom. It's that simple. Every time I take $1 from you, you have $1 less to express your freedom. And every time the state decides what's good for you, you're deprived of latitude of decision making. So the state has decided that what's good for Rhode Island is more taxes because you're not paying enough. Rhode Island is in the top 10. This is great news, Shannon. We're in the top 10. You know what for?
Oh, it's great.
Taxes.
Of course.
We're one of the top 10 most heavily taxed states in the union, in the entire union.
Our little state. We shouldn't even be a state.
Well, and despite that, we're the top 10, right? Our schools, we all know by now, like bottom 10 percentile. Our roads, I don't have to tell you about that, people. You drive on them, right? Where are we going? The slow economic recovery, sluggish. So this is a headline. I'm going to paraphrase Edinaldo Tebaldi, economics professor from Bryant, that Rhode Island's prospects are sluggish for the economy. Slow economic recovery is due in large measure to structural hard headwinds. Structural headwinds, that means the foundation upon which Rhode Island is built is flawed in a manner that will drag our economy down for decades to come. And this is not a recent phenomenon. This started back in the 1990s. And it speaks to our health. If you have economic health, you have freedom to then invest in your health as you see fit. Now, we are here to help guide you toward the 120 lifestyle. That's the 120-year lifestyle. Our objective is to quite literally research elements of life extension, anti-aging, youth preservation. Why? Because the number one cause of disease is aging. And we have the science to analyze aspects of aging and to modify it. Is this mainstream medicine? No. Is it reacting to a disease state? Well, certainly that's required, and we do that. But intellectual medicine, the way that we practice, the way that my colleague, Dr. Michael Souza, practices, goes a step beyond that. And as such, it is alien to mainstream medicine. So our common patient may come in and say, I feel great, doc, but I know what comes next, right? I don't want to suffer the ravages of aging. I want to stay youthful. I want to stay active. There's a field of medicine called geriatrics that we don't think has their focus on anti-aging the way that we would like it to be. Geriatrics is accommodating the corrosion of aging. We're going to figure out ways to help you with your walker. We're going to figure out ways to fit you for an adult diaper that controls your incontinence. At intellectual medicine, anti-aging medicine reverses that question and says, let's stop the process. Hormone replacement is critical. Now, there's a bias out there in reporting. There's a bias in medical reporting. We have to tap into this. This is critical. Evidence-based medicine sounds lovely. And you'll hear some doctors, right? They're a little smug. I practice evidence-based medicine. I only practice what's in the literature because that is real medicine. You see. Your symptoms, poppycock. You do not have symptoms. The literature doesn't say that you have symptoms. Have you ever heard this one, Shannon? But doctor, I'm tired. My hair's shedding. I'm gaining weight. I'm constipated. You know, I read that these symptoms could be my thyroid. I'm sorry. Your symptoms? Your symptoms? Your blood work says you're normal. Clearly you have psychiatric issues. Get out of my office. Right? We see this all the time. And where do we see it? A lot in obesity. Right? Obesity is a medical condition. It is not a failure of will. Any doctor that tells you to go diet and exercise to lose weight is manifesting their ignorance on the topic. Do I have time? I'm running shy in time, aren't I? Yeah. So I'm going to tell you about one of my formative experiences when I was a resident in the Army, and the way this doctor dismissed the patient because, well, she was a fat, lying, obese patient, and the doctor could no longer tolerate her dishonesty, so he discharged her from his practice. And bearing witness to that affected the trajectory of my career. And we have to talk about the lies, the way, I don't know, maybe it's too powerful a word, the misrepresentation, there we go, that's better, the misrepresentation of medical evidence. And the way, did you know, Shannon, that 53% of the revenue from the AMA comes from selling copies of articles? And you know who they sell copies of articles to? Drug reps, so they can pass them out to physicians. So the physicians can see a headline that says something like, you know, biphosphonates are good for you. And the headline gets promulgated. And who wrote that headline? Somebody who's getting paid by the pharmaceutical company. You got to know this, people. You got to know where your doctor's getting their facts. But first, we'll take a short break. I'm Dr. Petteruti. This is Intellectual Medicine. Thanks for listening. Yeah, that article was powerful, and I sent it to you so that our listeners can tune it in.
I have it posted. It's going
You
to
have
be
it posted?
Yeah, you're going to talk about that, right?
Yeah, I'm going to talk about it when we come back. We'll have time. We'll have another 7 minutes.
Mm-hmm. Let me see when it's going up.
So manufacturing jobs, nationwide, manufacturing jobs have been on a steady increase for the last 18 months, up 274,000 jobs since July of 2017. Manufacturing is growing in America. They said it couldn't happen. A lot of this has to do with the belief and what can happen. You know, first, for something to happen, the first thing you have to do to have something occur is believe that it can happen. The idea that manufacturing in America is dead and has been exported permanently turned out not to be so much the case. Right? We can manufacture and grow things, but you can't do it when you're suffering under a blanket of regulatory choke points. And that's one of the things that Rhode Island is suffering under. Choke points all over with regulation. Every time a new law gets passed, there's a new book of regulations that accompany it. You know, the old laws end up lingering. We just gave you an example of one, right? The state police having the freedom to do warrantless searches of the medical records of patients through looking through this PMP. I wonder, Shannon, if we took that PMP list and if we just handed it out to people, that would be a violation. We can't just turn that over.
That's what I'm saying. How is that not a HIPAA violation? They can just look up anyone. Hey, their neighbor. They're like, oh yeah,
Yeah, right.
You know.
Right. Do we trust the integrity of every clerk
No.
at the Department of Health? Do we entrust the moral fortitude of every individual that is employed by the state police, from the captain on down to the custodial clerk? How hard is it to like tap into that database? It's got to be easy.
Over and over again. Why settle for the same old product when you can get something completely different?
Oh,
Something
commercial
that
for
takes
male
male
enhancement.
into the 21st century.
Wow. Did you hear about the guy who
You
the
need to try Noxitrol.
I shouldn't laugh. He died. So it's sad when people die. Shannon, did you hear about this guy? He's a billionaire with a B.
Try to imagine
He died in France getting penile enhancement surgery.
No.
Yep.
Oh, well, he was trying. That's too bad. How'd he die?
He had a heart attack. Yeah, they were in the middle of the procedure. They injected something into his unit. He had a heart attack. It's just sad.
That's tough.
I think it's a little bit
We don't want you to overperform.
cut back the dose.
800-217-1579. 3 bottles for a limited time. So call now. 800-217-1579. 800-217-1579.
I don't know. Should we comment on that commercial?
No. It's just
Not right.
no. It's not. But that's okay. They can do that.
What's that, love?
They can have like commercials like that.
That's right. That's right. Cut down your dose because you just might be overcharged. Too stimulated. If you take this over-the-counter supplement, whew, watch out, people. Well, you know what? Go for it.
Right? It's kind of funny.
Yeah. They did a study on obesity and found that, shockingly, when family doctors treat obesity as a medical condition, there was a 46% remission in diabetes when they treated diabetics, when they treat it as a medical condition.
Now back to intellectual medicine with Dr. Petteruti. Call in now at 438-321-WPRO.
We're back. It's Dr. Petteruti. You're listening to Intellectual Medicine. Yeah, it's just not Saturday morning without a tune from Kate. Thanks, Tyler. Yeah, she's on it, man. She's good reporter. Like hearing her on WPRO. And by the way, people, thank you for listening to WPRO. You know, we are your local, live, freedom-loving radio station. We are not centrally controlled, bought, or paid for. At least, well, Shannon and I aren't. We're trying desperately, but it's just not working for us. But we got to turn to this issue. Evidence-based medicine. This is from an article in Medium, which is an online journal of sorts, and it's Dr. Jason Fung, and the evidence that he put in this, I validated it is accurate. You can find our articles. How do they find them, Shannon?
It'll be posted right after the show on Facebook.
So some of the things I discuss on the radio shows, we do post articles about on our Facebook page.
We do.
So we like to verify and back up our sources. Mm-hmm. And I'll tell you, folks, if we say something and you want to know more about it, send a message. How should they send a message?
They can email me.
You can email you.
They can.
How do they do that?
Shannon at im-120.com. Or they can go onto our website and just send it through that.
You go to our website. Mm-hmm. You can request information. We're here to educate. We're here to share information. We like it when some of the things we discuss get challenged. So here it goes, folks. There's evidence-based medicine is when doctors take the literature and they use it to guide their decisions. What happens when the literature itself has been corrupted? Here are some ways in which it gets corrupted. 1, selective publication. In essence, most of the studies, many of them, are financed by pharmaceutical companies. They pay for the study. They pay for the people doing the study. They design the study, and they control the result. In 2009, the New England Journal of Medicine reported articles on antidepressants, studies that had favorable results. 36 of 37 of those favorable studies ended up getting published. So in other words, you do a study on an antidepressant, the outcome looks favorable for the drug, That got published. Now follow the logic. Only 3 of 36 studies with negative outcomes received publication. Only 3 ever made it to the literature. What happened to the other 33 studies with bad outcomes? The company buries them because it doesn't look good for their drug. Now, an honest primary care doctor does a literature search. They're going to find 36 positive articles and 3 bad ones. They're going to believe the overwhelming evidence favors the drug, when in fact the evidence was suppressed. Here's another concern: rigged outcomes. Until the year 2000, studies could be done with no targeted objective, and then they would mine the results for an outcome that looked favorable, and then they would publish that. Nowadays, they have changed that. This is a good change, and it's a step in the right direction. They have to pre-declare the outcome of the study before it gets launched. Okay, that's pretty good. But here's another problem. They know how to manipulate the study to get the outcome they want. I remember as a medical student, Shannon, a doctor was involved in a clinical study, and it was to determine whether one drug was better than another for headache. And he was being paid to help execute the study. Now, the study here, I'm in quotes, right? He said, we know what the outcome is going to be. The drug in question is clearly better than the drug they're comparing it to. But they want the study so they can say that and show the study to other doctors to promote their drug. We call that beating up a straw man. It's when you compare a drug to another drug that you know it's going to beat so that you can get a headline. Another area of corruption, what they call advertorials. And this is when an editorial is written by doctors, published in a medical journal, to try to summarize evidence. An article in 2010, a review article in the New England Journal of Medicine, concluded that the concern regarding abnormal fractures from biphosphonates was highly exaggerated. Now, biphosphonates, people, a multi-billion-dollar drug. These are drugs like Fosamax that are intended to prevent fracture and to strengthen bone in the face of osteoporosis, okay? Huge money involved. Merck is one of the companies making one of the drugs. They make Fosamax. Guess who wrote the editorial? They concluded that fractures are, quote, very rare, end quote. The editorial was written by employees of Merck, people that were taking money from the company. And the editorial went in the New England Journal of Medicine, which gets 23% of their income, at least from this one source, from reprinted articles. What does that mean? Well, the drug company, like a drug rep, now wants to sell Fosamax. So they get copies of this article, they bring it with them to the doctor's office, say, see, doc, the worry about fracture is exaggerated. So these forces collude and reinforce each other, and they end up leaving a perception that drugs are superior to other forms of treatment. The money is colossal. We can't really blame the pharmaceutical companies. They're doing what they're supposed to. They're protecting the interest of their shareholders. They want to optimize profit. They must therefore accentuate positive outcomes. You put this together collectively and you start to build a perception that drugs are the thing. And what happens when you go to a doctor in America? You get drugs and drugs and more drugs. Are we in better health? Are we thriving? How are we doing out there? Well, not so hot, right? We're not getting what we're paying for, people. Intellectual medicine was born out of the frustration of the suffocating conformity of mainstream medicine that is now encroached on the doctor-patient relationship, has robbed them of their freedom of time, has robbed them of their freedom of thought and speech, is centrally controlling the information, the behavior, the manner in which doctors, and there is a counter movement afoot, and intellectual medicine is part of it. Sometimes it goes by the title of direct doctors, where physicians are breaking away from the system. There will be a reaction to this movement. They will try to stifle it. They being mainstream medicine, because it's not good for their business. Every time one of you people steps out of line and takes care of your health, you deprive pharmaceutical companies of profit. A study, this was, I promised Pat from the Libertarian that we talk about obesity. We must. It is a neglected medical entity. It is the pandemic of our time, and it is largely misunderstood. One study recently published showed that if primary care doctors made it their business to treat obesity for diabetics, there was a 46% remission rate of diabetes. 46%. Merely by unleashing the freedom, the power, and the ability of doctors to treat obesity. Now, there are some problems with this study, one of which was the relapse rate. We know obesity is chronic. That is, it relapses. We know diets don't work. People don't stay on diets. They do stay on permanent change. We know that drug therapy to control metabolism and modify nutritional behavior is frequently essential to the outcomes. And we know that supplements can also have enormous value when properly integrated. This knowledge is there. It works. It's available. And yet it gets stifled. And it gets stifled because, hey, there's no evidence for it. Now, think of your intellectual medicine doctors, your naturopath. Think of people that are not pushing drugs. And the saw that is used against this approach is that we don't have the evidence. Well, we don't have the money to pay for the articles, to pay for the editorials. We don't have the money to pay for the studies, but we are progressing. We are gathering that evidence through you, the way you thrive, the way you live. We're gathering the evidence through hundreds and thousands of patients that are being reborn into a healthy and dynamic life based on their definition of health. Folks, I'm Dr. Steve Petteruti. Up next, Tony DeJesus and the Big Blue Bug. We are wishing you, Shannon and I, on behalf of Tyler, 120 youthful years. Why not 120? Why not? 100? Not ambitious enough. Aim high, people. We'll see you next week.